All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. My name is Quentin Ring. I think most of you know me. I'm Beyond Baroque's executive director. It's very nice to see all of you today. It is quite a sad occasion. We're here to remember, pay tribute to, and celebrate Jerry Garcia, a dear, dear friend of Beyond Baroque's and of the entire Los Angeles poetry community. I think this is going to be a very special afternoon. We have a lot of really wonderful readers here to pay tribute to him. And I'd just like to say on behalf of Beyond Baroque, we're really going to miss Jerry. He was a really very important member of our community. He served on our board. I've said it several times before. Beyond Baroque probably wouldn't exist as it is today without Jerry. When we had some difficulties, in sort of the end of the first decade of the 2000s, he really stepped in to help rescue the organization. And he did that sort of thing for not just Beyond Baroque, but a huge swath of the community as well. He got Valley Contemporary Poets restarted again. He was just a friend of poets, and he was a brilliant poet himself. We hosted his book launch for Trumpets in the Sky, I believe it was in 2022. Really one of my favorite events. And it's just really, this one hurts because we just said goodbye to Jerry just about a year and a half ago when he and Becky moving out to the desert for retirement. And just really glad to see Jerry getting to take some time and enter go to a new place and hopefully work on his writing. And so we really miss him, and this my heart goes out to Becky and to everybody who was close to him. It hurts because there's so much to celebrate, and so we're hoping today is both joyous and sad. I think that's the way it should be, but we're really glad to have all of you here because it means a lot, these kind of community events, to pay tribute to Jerry and the people in the community. There will be a little reception outside afterwards in the Poets Garden, so I hope you'll join us afterwards for some conversation and some more remembrances. But for now, I think we should get started with the tribute. And so your host, our host for the afternoon will be Rick Lupert. He's going to guide us through the program. Thank you all so much.
I know we have a lot of poets and writers in the room, and it seems like as a poet or an artist of any kind, we're just already wandering around with the weight of our own mortality on every decision that we make. We open the refrigerator, and which piece of bread are we going to use for the toast, the wheat or the rye? I don't know. We might die today. It's this is not the kind of event which helps with that, really. We could be doing anything today. We could have decided separately to meet in the back room of a Denny's, which with just a phone call, I'm sure they would have reserved for us, and we all could have ordered, ironically, the moons over Miami if we wanted. And for a number of reasons, I would order that out of solidarity with you, but decline to have the ham on it. We could have gone down to the boardwalk and taken our pick of incense scents. It's so close. We could all be there right now just doing that instead of this. The airport is close. Ohio is lovely this time of year and reasonable. It is not expensive to go or be in Ohio, but instead we are here to say maybe not goodbye, but more to celebrate the life of our friend, of our teacher, of our organizer, of our community supporter, of our husband. He was just your husband, actually, now that I think about it. But maybe today, just for today, we can all sort of adopt that. In this special room, as Quentin mentioned, which Jerry spent so much time in over so many years, sharing his own poetry, coming to witness poetry being shared, presenting poets here. His book launch was here. This is the place Jerry wanted to have his farewell to Los Angeles as well. So this is sacred ground for Jerry and for all of us. And Sadly, it's not the first time. I'm sure many of us have been in this room to do this exact thing, to say farewell to people. So that's it. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for coming. I've skipped prematurely to the end, which of course is what Jerry did. Sorry, the committee warned me not to say that, but then they remembered who they'd invited to host and realized there was no getting around it. So I apologize for that. We have a fantastic roster of people reading today to celebrate Jerry's life. I hope you'll forgive my attempts at humor. I don't know that I've ever been to a funeral or a celebration of life that hasn't had laughter at it. I think if there isn't laughter at it, it's not being done right. I think there's a great sadness to the loss of a person, which is heavy and which we carry with us for sure. But really what we move forward with is the celebration of that person's life and our interactions with that person, which were positive, which were joyous, which involved laughter, right? So I hope we have more of that today. We have a list of people. We've kind of arranged it going back and forth between people reading things that they've written for Jerry, as well as Jerry's own work from his book. So that's kind of how it's being put together. We'll do an on-deck thing. I'll let you know who's up next so you can be ready. Since we do have a long list, I ask that no one spend more than 90 minutes at the mic each, please, if possible. On deck, Ashaki M. Jackson, and please welcome one of Jerry's teachers, one of many people's teachers in Los Angeles, Laurel Ann Bogen.
Why do I feel like an old bride? I'll tell you. I refuse to be too serious today because Jerry was such a colorful human being. I decided to dress in vibrant colors. How I knew Jerry Garcia. The quarter was just beginning at UCLA, where I was teaching creative writing poetry for the Extension Writers Program. Every quarter I wondered who would be in the class. What would they be like? How much did they already know? Would they be able to listen to comments, or were they only just interested in praise? The first night of class that quarter began with a lively group of students, a few men, but mostly women. After I talked to them about the class, I asked the students to divide into groups of 2 and interview the person sitting next to them. Then they would introduce that person to the person sitting next to them. They were to ask certain questions I would suggest to break the ice, such as, where did you grow up? What is your favorite food? Who is your favorite poet? And why are you taking this class? I would give them about 20 minutes to interview each other. As we proceeded, one student who sat next to a man who had a notebook and pen out described him in a general way. He worked in the film business making trailers, some called them coming attractions, had 3 daughters who lived with their mother, and also played guitar. Then he added, but I'm not related to the other Jerry Garcia. He must have cringed when asked that question, whether 1 or 1,000 times. I made a promise that no one in the class would ask him about the Grateful Dead. Mr. Garcia, why are you taking this class? I'm taking it to meet women, he said. I mean, since my family disintegrated, I've been lonely. I wondered, where could I go to meet women? The type of women I might like. I'm not the gym type, person or hang out in bars, so I thought I would try a poetry class because they usually have a lot of women in that. To be honest, I never had a student give me that answer before. Original, honest, and practical. That is how I met Jerry. That was about 30 years ago. After the class at Extension ended, Jerry asked me if I taught anywhere else. Like many other writers, I did have a private workshop. Some of you have been in it at certain times. And like many other writers, I had a private workshop that gathered in my apartment. But because we met through the writers program, I had an obligation to them and could not have him join us until he had taken the other poetry classes that the writers program offered, which is what he did. Jerry didn't meet the love of his life at UCLA Extension, but later he did meet and was happily married to Becky. He also found something in himself that he did not know was there. He discovered poetry. It came to be that, among other things, Jerry made a commitment to himself and to poetry to be a serious taskmaster. He showed up every week to class, went to poetry readings when there were good ones around town, and read every poetry book he could get his hands on. Slowly, he learned that to write great poetry, you must read poetry, to study all sorts of poetry and poets. The goal was for him to experience and develop his own idea about what worked and not worked in poetry. I would suggest poets that I thought he would learn from: Pablo Neruda, Joy Harjo, Michael C. Ford, Philip Levine, Ada Limon, Sharon Olds, W.S. Merwin, Frank O'Hara, Sandra Cisneros, Naomi Shihab Nye, Galway Cannell, poets representing many schools of poetry. And he read their work in any way he could, in books, anthologies, CDs, or online. Mark Strand once wrote about a poem about eating poetry so that by ingesting it, it would become part of his very soul and his DNA. I would say that Jerry took that concept to heart. It became more than a hobby for him. It became a reason to get up in the morning. Many young poets think that poetry is written in one draft. We talked about that a lot. We talked about how not to get discouraged if your first efforts are not lauded. I told him about how there was a magazine in Iowa City where I really wanted to be published. I sent some 4 or 5 poems there, but they were not accepted. So 6 months later, I sent some more, and then another 6 months again. After 12 years, they finally did accept and publish some of my poetry, and that is true. Although it may sound like this is a one-way relationship, to be honest, our friendship was much more than that. I have been a poet in Los Angeles for over 50 years. I have been a poet when it was fashionable and when it was not. The fact that Jerry listened to what I had to say and valued it made it a difference in my life when my inner voice would tell me that I was a failure, unable to live in the world, had nothing worthy to live for incessantly. Because Jerry discovered the place within himself where poetry writers, readers, and performers are respected and allowed to grow, I believe that he felt an integral part of the Los Angeles poetry community, a literary citizen. He was excited about being a poet and all that it meant. He walked the walk as well as talking the talk. He fell in love with Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, joined its board of directors, and due to his generosity and insight, was able to keep it afloat during difficult times. Living in the San Fernando Valley, where literary events are scarce, he co-founded and refounded the Valley Contemporary Poets, or VCP, a reading series originated by poet Nan Hunt in the early 1980s. It featured poets from all over Los Angeles County, but especially San Fernando Valley. Jerry published 2 poetry collections. His second, Trumps in the Sky, was published by Orange County Press Moontide. In so many ways, Jerry demonstrated what it means to have a creative life. When I think about some of the many accomplishments that he brought into the world, the memories are bittersweet. Sweet because of his generosity of spirit, such as mentoring younger poets who needed guidance, yet bitter because I will miss him very much. I will now read one of his poems, one of my favorites of his poems, called Dog Years. We don't much talk. Jaffe doesn't leave my side except to be with my wife when she is in the bedroom and I am in the den. He stretches like a rug across the hallway, a Secret Service agent, watching its top charges, eyeing our very move. Jaffe, named for a Jack Kerouac character, will someday be gone, waking me at 3 a.m. in the morning, forgetting that he needs to pee. That old man of a canine stands in the kitchen, staring at the floor tile, his mind appropriately lost. I hold the door open, sniff for skunk. Like an old jalopy, he restarts, moving slowly across the threshold. Coyotes jump fences when it is worthwhile. Now I become Jaffe's guard. When he returns, I offer the puppy treat he expects. Once a ploy to suggest using the backyard as his potty, 15 years later, it has become our old couple's ritual. Named for a Jack Kerouac character, Jaffe the dog will someday be gone. Bye.
Thank you, Laurel Ann. I think your essay is a perfect foundation for us to move forward, and on the back of which we will hear much of Jerry's work and much more tributes for him. And so much truth in it, too, I think, regarding his answer to your question in the class. I think, correct me if I'm wrong in history, but when Craigslist closed their personal section, that's when the poetry community in LA really just started to flourish. Laurel Ann Bogen. On deck, Beth Ruscio. Please welcome Ashaki M. Jackson.
It's an honor to be here amongst friends to celebrate Jerry's life. I'm going to read a piece recommended by Becky. I guess it's too late to be a Major League Baseball player, after Bernadette Meyer's essay. I guess it's too late to be a Major League Baseball player. I guess it's too late to play any ball at all. I guess it's too late to begin a running routine. I guess I'll never join a baseball team. I guess I'm not jock enough to be a ball player. Now I'm really channeling it, me being a jock. I guess I couldn't afford to give up my day job and learn to bunt. I guess baseball playing is just not in the cards anymore. I guess we are not suited to be ball players. I guess we will never have a baseball mitt now. I guess I shouldn't expect that we would play baseball together now. I guess I missed my summer play opportunity. I guess I can expect we will not be on a baseball team now. I guess I'll have to give up my dreams of becoming a ball player. I guess I'll never be a ball player now. I don't like baseball that much anyway. Don't know if you got that vibe from us. Although the poet Eloise Klein Healy is a fan. Shout out to Elo. Maybe someday I'll throw the ball around with a grandchild. I guess ball playing is really out. Fielding grounders and hitting balls, running around the bases, shaking hands. I guess the calisthenics is just too tough for me. I'll never play ball at all. Too much exercising might take away from my poetry. I just want to sit in that because that's true. It's so true. Who are the baseball playing poets? Was there ever an RBI leading poet? Fernando Perez was a ball player and a published poet, but he didn't play in the majors very long. Lots of poets write about baseball. Michael C. Ford writes about the sport. Thayer wrote Casey at Bat. Updike, Corso, and Ferlinghetti wrote their national pastime tomes. William Carlos Williams wrote about the ball game crowd, even though he was a physician. Many poets do play ball, softball, sandlot, and bush. They even teach their children t-ball. But I guess most poets tend to play away from the crowd. I don't think a poet would read a poem from the mound. Well, maybe. I've seen poetry read in some stranger places, so why not play ball and write poetry? I guess it would be hard to stop between bases when inspiration hits like a line drive to right field. Thank you.
Incidentally, Ashaki will be, during the reception, teaching a workshop on bunting that we can all participate in if you would like. Thank you so much, Ashaki M. Jackson. We're entering into the Beth phase of the afternoon. On deck is Elizabeth Iannaci. We will have a third Beth later. My understanding, it was one of Jerry's dreams to have a three Beth reading. It's finally been achieved tonight, this afternoon. Please welcome now Beth Ruscio.
So, I just love Jerry. I just love Jerry. About a month ago, I got my clown car off the street and I picked up a bunch of poets and we went down to Montebello to Jerry's funeral, which was presided over by Father Gregory Boyle. So it was a real, it was an amazing afternoon, and not the least of which because we were there, and you'll hear, I'm going to read, let me just announce that I'm going to read both the things I'm going to read are I wrote for Jerry. This is a poem I wrote for Jerry. And the next thing I'll read is a foreword I wrote for his book, which I know you didn't mean to say this, Laurel Ann, but it's Trumpets in the Sky, not Trumps in the Sky, although I wish. It's an idea. Let's get him up there.
He doesn't qualify.
He doesn't. No, I know. He'd ruin everything, like everything else he does. So, and then I have an announcement. So I may not go the whole 90 minutes, but, I'll try to be. So this is a poem I wrote for Jerry, and the title is, "And His Poetry to Protect Him," for Jerry Garcia, 1954 to 2024. His handwriting, he had to admit, became illegible even to him. Words he'd scrawled across the page, inscribed to me, will pulse in mystery, flickering, for in its most flammable state, writing is friction, a sign of life. Sisters had taught us both, different classroom, same curriculum, to form perfect letters with fountain pens, jeweled peacock ink from the color family of sky, making our T's like signs of the cross, and between words, leaving space for the Holy Ghost. Father Gregory Boyle, rejoicing at the funeral that he could count a poet as a classmate, as a friend. "We don't live forever," he said, "but we can live in the forever." After his funeral, the sisters sat with us poets, we who love poetry enough to devote ourselves to it. His defeated body in ashes and mantle placed his urn. We believed in longhand, thoughts at the speed of pen to paper. Jerry's sense of wonder at the Eucharist line of bliss and decadence he wore cocked like a favorite hat. Even our disbelief, by God, we were taught to offer up. My announcement is, and I've talked this over with Quentin, I'm going to start a GoFundMe to buy Jerry a chair in this room. And one of the charities that Becky, most dearly wanted you to contribute to was Homeboy Industries and to Beyond Baroque. And if you were to think of this as it is a donation. That's why Quentin didn't want to make the announcement, but it is a donation to Beyond Baroque, which would really, but as important, you could sit in his chair some nights, as I did, sitting next to him. So I even know which chair maybe Becky can be more specific, but I pretty much know what chair he'd like. I wish the Murderer's Row was still there. I used to sit there with Philomene and Michael C. We'd sneak in, and then she'd sneak out before the thing was done. But I'll be here. So, Trumpets in the Sky, this is what he inscribed to me, which is illegible. I have no idea, but I actually don't care. I love that it's a mystery. I live in the mystery, just like Keats, we just, you don't have to chase after the logical. Yes, just live in the mystery. So he asked me to write a foreword for this book. And, there's one little thing else I want to say, which is in this room when Jerry had this going away party, and I remember standing at this very podium and saying, "Well, you're not dying. You're just going to another town. You'll be here a lot." But that event was taped, was filmed, and Jerry would call me. We talked a lot, often, every week. He would call me and he'd say, "Don't tell anybody. But I've been watching that reading again, and it's so great. It's so great." Rick wrote a poem, well, maybe he'll read it later. I hope he does. Anyway, Jerry just, cavelling over this great reading, and it was kind of like he got to be at his own memorial. So here's my foreword for Trumpets in the Sky. A bright-eyed melancholy is the first note I made on Trumpets in the Sky. This describes both the work and its author. Consider his endearingly named website, www.gratefulnotdead.com, which both winks at the joke and adds a dollop of relief. Yep, still here. In the wonder years of the new century, I first saw Jerry Garcia one Sunday morning in the Silver Lake apartment where Laurel Ann Bogen held her private poetry workshop. At that hour, in that living room, on the shadowy side of the building, dimly illuminated by, let's call it, brothel lighting, we gathered. The recorded voice of a poet reading their work played over the speakers. It was the ritual beginning that, as a theater artist and a lapsed Catholic to boot, suited me just fine and made the moody morning feel like communion as we listened and watched each other listen to great poetry. Later, on the sidewalk in the jolting wattage of Southern California as everybody else has gone surfing afternoon, I got a good look at Jerry. I don't believe I caught his last name until months later. But our enduring friendship began outside, where sometimes, for as long as the workshop, we replayed the morning's work, hashing over the fine points, both of us reluctant to let go of the spell that poetry had cast over us. Then we discovered we had the so-called universal language of cinema in common. Each of us had logged countless hours working around cameras, he behind them, me in front. Even as new friends, we talked like old friends. In this same disarming way, this book feels like an open invitation to be his sidekick, to be a party to his travels. The road is definitely a recurring theme in Jerry's work. His earlier collections, Hitchhiking with the Guilty and On Summer Solstice Road, testify to that romance. I am hunger on the run. Although, like all the best seekers, he's less enchanted with arriving, because after a little hand-holding, he just might be attached to a comet hurtling through a galaxy. As ballast for these many outward-bound journeys, including trips that never leave the sacred spot of his own living room, he delivers the constant hum of engagement with both the strange and the mundane. Jerry wears his sense of wonder like a favorite hat. This is writing tempered by a hard-won acceptance of taking the world on its own terms. At the Eucharist line of bliss and decadence, there's confession in this book, there's tenderness, lots of it, doling it out toward loved ones, toward strangers, and maybe, in the most unsentimental way, to Jaffe Ryder, the dog he named after a character in Dharma Bums. It fits the cadence of his inquiries. It fits the cadence of his inquiries, the up and down beats of what he brings to the page, imagining a jazz pianist improvising underneath. To be in the company of these poems is to see a world through a lens that's composing a shot, like a portrait, taking in the fleeting, the lasting moments, small and large, the wows and how about that. Jerry is that rare combination, thoughtful, generous, an easy laugher, a serious man. And I think with this book, he's given his passions free rein, to quote Kerouac, like the Jaffes of the world, to find the ecstasy of the stars, to find the dark, mysterious secret of the origin of faceless, wonderless, crapulous civilization. Read all about it. Love you, Jane.
88 minutes, 30 seconds. You did it, Beth. You can just buy chairs in here, Quentin. Something you're starting. I mean, it just seems like maybe I'm just realizing that there's only so many chairs in here, and a lot of poets in here in LA are getting old. There's going to be like a land rush, to get these things. So I recommend picking one out before you leave today, and you'll have a price list for us. Okay. Beth, wonderful. Thank you so much for all of that. Beth Ruscio, everyone. Bryn Wickerd, you're on deck. Our second Beth of the evening, Elizabeth Iannaci.
Yeah, more hazardous every.
So thank you. It is an absolute honor to participate in this celebration. I actually don't remember when I first met Jerry. And I think the reason for that is for many, many years, I don't think I ever looked out into an audience where I was reading or I was hosting or I was facilitating in some manner and did not see Jerry's face. So I think I felt like I knew him before I met him. And I had such incredible respect for his love of poetry and his support of poets. And I think it was non-paralleled, extraordinary love and support that he gave to the poetry community, and not even to mention his beautiful poetry. But for a number of years, we would read together at the beginning of April at the Botanical Gardens, the Santa Ana Botanical Gardens, which was not in Santa Ana. It was in either Montclair or Claremont. Thank you. But they're kind of interchangeable.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's not even called that.
Oh, well, see.
California.
Okay, well, that makes more sense. And we would, and as his walking became more problematic, we would kind of hobble together through the pathways of the botanical gardens, and he would. It was really fun because I'm a slow walker because I can't see ahead of me, and it just takes me a while to get the picture. And his halting gait, and we kind of complemented each other, and we could wander the grounds without it appearing like we were infirm in any way. But we had so many extraordinary conversations. So when he asked me, anything he ever asked me to do with poetry was an automatic yes. Just an automatic. And Ashaki, that you read the baseball poem, we had, after the book was released, we had a number of conversations about poetry and baseball because they parallel each other in strange ways, strange and wonderful ways. But I had mentioned to him B.H. Fairchild's poem, Body and Soul, which is about Sandlot baseball in the 50s, which probably is the poem responsible for my writing poetry. And if you don't know the poem, you really should. It's a miraculous piece. But we just kind of went on and on about the beauty of that. And also, I had seen Yusef Komunyakaa up in Idlewild. He spent a week up there, and I was lucky enough to like hang out with him. And every time he went to the podium and started to read a poem, I thought he was like a pitcher on the mound, like winding up for the pitch. And it was a slow kind of sensual wind up to this incredible fastball of a poem. And in some ways, Jerry's poems were deceptive like that. So this beautiful book, Trumpets in the Sky, I got one of the first copies, and for whatever reason, we were just busy, or there were too many people around, and he didn't sign it. And we kept saying, oh, next time. And it still remains unsigned. So if you have to carry 10 books of poetry around with you, I recommend that you do so that when you run into the author of that poetry book, you can have it signed, because you don't know when next time is going to be. But this is one of my favorite poems in this collection. And it's called Human Touch. Headlights followed me like a jet squadron in formation. 4 lanes, 8 lights, blurring from my exhaustion, eyes reverting from rear view to red glowing dots ahead. When darkness came down like a curtain drawn, no lampposts, no cars, no reflections, completely opaque, like Sister Margaret Mary's story about the world's end. I became weightless, a sprite in ocean air. My vehicle no longer carried me. I became awash in crashing waves. The sea was black with white caps. Was it moonlight or a patrolman's flashlight? I might have been floating. I might have been flying. You found me in a hospital after days, you said. I might have been in outer space, attempting inventory of countless stars, or maybe they were specks of sand at the bottom of the briny deep. You didn't have a clue where I had gone, but fed the dog and tended the roses while waiting. You could be holding my hand right now, or I might be attached to a comet, hurling through the galaxy long before the earth held water, or human touch came to be. Jerry, grateful, Garcia. Thank you.
Elizabeth Iannaci, thank you so much for being here. A round of applause for Elizabeth. It occurred to me, if there was a chair for Jerry in here, that you could refer to it as Cherry Garcia. This is the kind of thing that gets people burned at the stake. Lisa Cheby, you're on deck. Please welcome Bryn Wickerd. Hello, Bryn.
Thank you, Rick. Though I am aware that there are people in this room who have known Jerry and have been friends with Jerry for longer than I've been alive, I do understand that he is a dear friend to the poetry community, and I'm lucky to be among one of his many friends. Jerry and I wrote poems to each other in 2023, and so that's what I would like to share for you this afternoon. I'm also realizing this evening how much Jerry liked hats. It appears a lot in his poetry, and even in the poetry he wrote for me. This is Scenic Route. The city keeps changing, but children in LA have always been afraid of being eaten by coyotes, and the adults have referred to a mountain lion as Kitty for 12 years. Brake lights reflect off of each other, red and white traveling cells pumping through veins of the freeway. This always used to be that. Games are played to keep memories within reach. Where do you think stories get made? Opening the car door on the passenger side before we drive off the scenic route. Mulholland takes longer, Jerry says, but it's worth it. He takes us to tea in a clown car apartment to meet the purple-haired reflection of myself at 70. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Jerry would light my cigarettes if I still smoked them. How Hollywood ought to be. Our host serves rose jam and scones on tea from Paris and promises me ornate depression glass in return for friendship. Jerry smiles. His eyes glisten, knowing the connection he creates. Jerry, I used to, and still do, refer to as my poetry grandpa. And I think he wore that title with honor. He wrote me this poem, though he did confuse Nevermore with the poetry circus. I think it's all the more special because it doesn't matter how we met, it's just the feeling that he carried for me. So these are his words. We met at a poetry festival in a municipal square the last Saturday of October 2016. Though as sun shone on uncovered heads and sparkled off sidewalks to light Bryn's animated face, their hat appealed to me. I don't remember comments about my chapeau, but they showed no disdain. I have since forgotten to ask if they thought me strange that day. We walked together among costumed poets and bookseller tables in an inspired carnival setting. Our conversation was happy and laid back. We knew some of the same poets, but not each other. The stage was on a concrete slab facing the grassy square full of costumed listeners. Separately, we took the microphone, read our poems, then disappeared to carry our words elsewhere. Days turned into years before we met again, to join as comrades in a festival of the imagination.
Bryn's entire life has been encompassed by the life of Jerry Garcia. Since within Jerry Garcia, you were born, learned to drive, became a director of the VCP, and put out a book just this year, which is in the other room. Your poetry grandpa would be proud. Thank you, Bryn, for being here. Bryn Wickerd. Amato, you're on deck. Please welcome Lisa Cheby.
I'm very honored to be part of this reading and to be asked to read one of Jerry's poems. When I first entered the poetry, became taking poetry seriously here in Los Angeles, I met Jerry, and he invited me into the VCP and the Cobalt readings, and just much of this world of poetry in LA, and I'm really indebted to him for that and for always being such a support of my work and introducing me to others in the community. And I'm just really honored to be part of this and to remember him, and will miss him greatly. I got to see him in Palm Springs back in March, and when I was there for a conference, and I'm really grateful we had those 2 hours over coffee to catch up, as I hadn't seen him in a long time. Interstate 60. I saw my neighborhood destroyed by destiny when I was 6 years old. My friends disappeared for life, reduced to the fine powder of demolition. I watched their houses splintered and smashed to host an 8-lane highway. I played with the longboards, the broken porcelain of sinks and toilets, cinder block perimeters, cracked foundations, silt and rusty pipes when water no longer flowed from the homes of my childhood friends. Baseball cards and jacks, covered by weeds, toys traded for rock piles, chain link fences, bulldozers and cranes. Mortar applied, covered by black sticky asphalt, the bitter odor that permeated the nights of my youth. The freeway emerged, surfing gulls in the speed of traffic, squeal of brakes, trucks gusting a new era. Highways separated east from north of east, the immigrant Russian replaced by the middle-class Mexican-American, replaced by new immigrant Chinese. A skinny 16-year-old boy stared through the concrete pylons. Boisterous pals, cigars, and joints became the interior of a teenage night. Heading west to music, tie-dye, and unwashed hair, smoking and spilling wine on the roots buried underneath that freeway. Ocean waves like schooners of beer, a blue yacht background to the destitute of Main Street, the homeless disappeared or wished they had. 99-cent movie halls collapsed, apartments and vendor shacks flattened to make way for malls of fast food and plastic fashion. Streets square and parallel like an engineer's grid, but I cannot drive straight. Noise in my head pierces sharper than squealing traffic, louder than the motor's torque. I must shift gears and exit this junkie fueled existence before I, too, disappear. Freeways don't cross cemeteries. They swerve around. Under a concrete street bridge, throat dry, breath caught as if my last, I purge fear of the miles ahead and reach to rev my engine forward on this sprawling western highway. Thanks, Jerry.
Jerry Garcia, the prophet. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that. Lisa Cheby. Mary Torregrossa, you're on deck. Please welcome our third Beth, Amato.
Hi. We are the three Italian Elizabeth poets. It's not, it's like a big thing. It's not just like, oh, they're all named Beth. No, it's more than that. We are also all wonderful Italian women and poets. So Hi. I didn't have I just thought, oh, I'm going to be serious and come and read the poem and then go back and sit. And now I'm like, oh no, nobody's doing that. Okay. It's wonderful to be here. Oh, it's terrible to be here, but it's wonderful to be up here and to be able to share some words about Jerry or for Jerry. It was wonderful to have worked with him in so many different ways. We met as poets, but because we both did film, we actually ended up doing a short film together for another poet. And I worked for Jerry, and I worked with him as an editor. And there's just all these places that in the last, I guess it's been about 7 weeks, I've just remembered, oh, there was also that. Oh, we also did that. So I feel like there aren't that many people in my life where I have so many different connections to them, not just as, oh, the poet I go to the poetry reading with or the friend, but all of these other interconnections. And, I know Bryn said he's like your poetry grandfather. I do feel like he was sort of my poetry uncle or my LA uncle. I joked with him because my grandmother's family's name was Garcia, which it took me till I was 35 to realize was Garcia. I was like, what's a Garcia? So I used to think, oh, maybe we're related, So I do feel a little bit, he was my uncle. Okay, so there's visual aid for this. This is the visual aid for this poem, which I've been rewriting while I'm sitting there, so let's see how this goes. Yeah, I know, like I'm gonna get those. Okay. Reckless Daughter for Jerry Garcia. 1. The pages between my fingers have traveled from Balthamos to Swindon to the canyon to the beach. The book has heft in my hands, the weight of a life of music and men. I turn the page. One of Yaffe's sentences dazzles with its bone marrow comprehension of Joni. It sparks my recollection. These pages will carry next to the desert. I have already asked permission to pass this tome forward to Jerry, to share this Joni and these words with another Joni head, another like heart and mind. Remembrance buzzes like hummingbird wings in slow motion. Jerry will not be receiving this book when I finish, and will not be turning these pages between index and thumb. Did I read too slowly? Take pace for granted? Dally? 2. Jerry asks why the taupe has winters. I say something about the way she parses identity reminds me of your writing. Gifting books as yes and, as conversation, as visibility. Books from Jerry read or in progress are still on that pile we all have next to the bed, like Poet Warrior by Joy Harjo, which carved new neural memoir pathways still not dexterous enough for the contortions of Chanda Prescott Weinstein's astrophysics. The Marilyn passed to me despite I have no idea when I will be able to read this, and the Diane Wachowski, who we saw in this room. Books loaned, books no longer returnable. 3. In folders organized by a professional, stems of stories, music, disability, saints, a mid-century East Los Angeles youth, words I've had the privilege to read, words Jerry wanted to refine and share, words like tattoos quietly awaiting their bespoke editor. Cycle of give and receive short ends. The circle game breaks. Button poetry video contest, don't hit forward. Inapo online reading, don't hit forward. Poetry film festival, don't hit share. Jerry would get a kick out of this, don't text. That trusty carousel of time stops revolving for the tiniest moment, one that goes on forever. 4. Years of birthday week lunches model that it is possible to be an Aries and also finish things, not always breathe fire, and even create stability. And my favorite Jerryism, if you want something done, ask a busy person. I read Reckless Daughter for both of us now, thinking perhaps he hears the words inside my head or looks down on the page from elsewhere. Janet calls. Q-Tip responds, Joni Mitchell never lies. The track scratches, the sublime soprano sages. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you got Tillits.
Well, we've now all officially been at a 3 Beth reading. So well done, everyone. I assume with 3 Italian Beths here that pasta will materialize at the reception, probably? Okay, good. Round of applause for Amato. Will you still be working on the poem for the rest of the reading? Yeah, okay. Very good. We're a little more than, we're about halfway through. Dig Wayne is on deck. Please welcome now Mary Torregrossa. Hello, Mary.
So I love the Italian names. I'm Mary Elizabeth Torregrossa. Hear me out. Did you know that your eyesight gets better when you're older? Because even though you may be wearing glasses, you can see bullshit coming at you from a mile away. It's good to be old, and that was Jerry. I have a saying: surrender the past to the past, but not if you're a poet, and not if you're Jerry. We were in poetry events and circles together, but I knew Jerry in a way through family when we stood out in the parking lot after readings. We talk a little bit about poetry, and then we'd start talking about family. And my husband Minor would talk to Jerry about cars, and I was so thrilled when I found out that one of his daughters, who is a chef, went to school in my home state of Providence, Rhode Island. And Becky and Jerry and the girls went there and take some vacation time. And he would tell me he was going. He'd tell me when he was there. He'd talk to me about it afterwards. And really, being a transplant to Southern California, I was so happy that he was able to walk where I would have walked and done the things I might have done. And I really felt that, oh, now somebody knows why I talk like this. I'm sorry to Becky and the girls that I missed the memorial, I missed the goodbye reading, and I missed the funeral for health reasons. And partially I missed meeting up with the girls if I had a chance. They don't know me, but I know them. I'm very honored that Becky asked me to read this poem called How to Bury Your Dad to my daughters. Find yourself a yellow 67 Volkswagen with overheating pistons. Call it your VW Bug. It will burn plenty of fluid. Careful not to double clutch that steep winding grade from Santa Rosa to Trinidad, enter the fabled shading of ocean trees where scents of decomposing air, old foliage, and a bear's organic spray saturate the redwood bark. Don't fret traveling day doldrums. When you tire of driving, pull off to the side of the road. Let the Humboldt runoff model your boots. Eat coarse salami, crusty bread, and cheddar cheese. Your front trunk should carry laundry, oranges, and a red and blue cooler full of Budweiser and Perrier. If the fuel line chokes, Find a traveling neighbor to push downhill until torque overcomes stall. Isn't that the truth? Soon, you'll get to a downgrade clearing with glimpses of Pacific Ocean through burly redwood Goliaths. Seek a wooded rise where clouds and mountain peaks are level. Stop and smoke a reefer among the ferns. When the roads levels, dust my ashes. Your geezer dad into pine needles and sod. Litter the avenue of giants with my remains. Rest. Then carry on to Myers Flat, Scotia, Rio Dell, those peculiar forest towns leading to Eureka Bay. Experience oil-fogged air, northern kelp and beach salt. Take a sightseer's dalliance, travel for days, watch whales, grace the depths, and pelicans claiming bays. Be sisters. Be friends. Ride that rainy northerly jaunt through the haze and drizzle until your wipers fail.
Well done, Mary. Becky, it was nice that you left instructions. Was it difficult to follow all those as you were putting the... You're going to do it. Okay, good. Round of applause for Mary Torregrossa. Well done. On deck is Doug Forestay. Please welcome Dig Wayne.
Thank you, Rick. It's wonderful to be here. As many of you probably suffer from time to time from imposter syndrome, even though I've been writing song lyrics or poetry for many, many years. Whenever I talked to Jerry, he reminded me that I was a poet. We didn't usually talk about poetry. I seem to remember with Jerry talking, we were the same age. I remember talking about old television shows with Jerry. My Mother the Car. That's probably way over some of your heads. My Favorite Martian. Mrs. Brown. That's going deeper. Anyway, I always forget to put on my glasses when I get up here. Jerry and I, what we did talk about that I remember also was our disintegrating bodies. We were on our feet, but it was all disintegrating on the inside. Anyway, I'd just like to read this one called Blankets or Dark. I am never sure if those are blankets over my head or if the darkness has swallowed me whole. I am waiting for a letter of recommendation to Rapture. I've heard they have a great party in paradise. When the wormhole opens, may I be transported to a pleasant climate full of awareness and sense. Thank you.
Dig, thank you. I think I met you when Jerry presented you at the in-person Cobalt as a featured reader 65 years ago or so, and before our bodies were disintegrating into all this. But you, now you're a regular at the virtual Cobalt, and one of my favorite things is repartee with you after you read every week, and so you're like a gift that Jerry Garcia gave to me. So thank you so much for being here today. On deck, Michael C. Ford. Please welcome Doug Forestay.
Wow, you are really looking out into lights here. I can't see a single one of you now. I should say I'm substituting for one of Jerry's and my and Greg Boyle's classmates, Bruce McBirney, who was himself and continues to write poetry. Bruce's wife came down with COVID last week, and he decided not to make this a super spreader event. But Jerry and I met in 1968 when we started Loyola High School at the other end of Venice Boulevard, and we shared many experiences from Catholic elementary schools as well. His was about 4 miles from mine. And I suppose I've known him longer than anybody here except his sister Kathy, whom I can't see because the lights are in my eyes. Good and bad, we have wonderful experiences that created us for who we are. And wonderful in the sense that we wonder how we survived and how we didn't become crazy people, and also wonderful in the sense that they made us generous and kind and loving. One of the experiences we suffered before we ever got to high school, about 6 years before, was in the fall of 1962. We had started third grade, and it was a trauma that I think we felt for the rest of our lives. There was a crisis in Cuba with missiles, Russian missiles. I thought that perhaps I would have to explain that, but most of you know what that is because you're my age or older. And I think it was a thing for Jerry. So he wrote this poem in an earlier collection called American History 1962. The war, cold. The enemy, red. Our parochial uniforms, blue. When Sister Margaret clapped, we dove beneath our penciled scribe school desks. The bombs would soon be launched, seconds to impact, moments for prayer. The plaster of Paris Virgin Mary blessed the panicky believers. Cherub faces pushed into linoleum to protect innocent eyes from flashing waves of reprisal. Air raid sirens shrilled in training. We were 7 years old, harangued by adult fears about bomb shelters and Armageddon. Walking home from school, corduroy pants itched. Leather soles wore thin on hot concrete. Transistor radio earplugs filled our heads with scratchy news radio. I will miss you so much, Jer.
Thank you very much, Doug. Bryn, I know you're younger. Would you like Doug to come back up and tell us more about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
My grandma was the same age, so
Oh, we're good? Okay. Great, so we're covered there. Doug, thank you so much. Doug Forrest Day. I'm going to read a poem next after Michael C. Ford. Please welcome Michael C. Ford.
One of the things that Jerry and I had in common was that Catholic thing, and I'll tell you how that happened. My parents were Unitarian. My maternal grandparents were Unitarian. But for some reason, I guess I was in a lot of trouble in the third grade at Andrew Jackson Elementary and invited to leave, actually. Not expelled. And my mother put me in a parochial school, St. Elizabeth's on Lake Street, on Lake and Woodbury Road in Pasadena. So over time, I kind of dug it. It was the statuary, and then going into First Friday, the ritual, the Latin, and all that. I thought everything was in code, you know. And my mother became friendly with my teacher, who was I thought Sister Mary Gabriel was a goddess. I didn't think I never, but my mother, for whatever became very enamored of the church and converted to Catholicism. by the time before I went into the 4th grade. And she was never a Bible beater. She wasn't one of these evangelical people who said, you must all wash your soul in the blood of the Lamb. She was never on that level. And one of her closest friends was Jewish. Nettie was a lovely girl, and there was never any, oh, Nettie, you really got to have what I have. And there was none of that, a coercion. But Nettie had a sister, Dora, and my mother's brother married her, and so I had this a Catholic Jewish dichotomy. And which meant that on Fridays I would go to confession, but I would take my lawyer with me. And I bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I believe you know Mr. Goldstone. And so anyway, the other thing that Jerry and I had in common was our admiration for early Universal horror movies, Blackmail. The Old Dark House, The Man Who Laughed, marvelous movies that both had a lot of class and weren't the Nightmare on Elm Street kind of gruesome, gory bloodletting, which is kind of moronic to me. But so we admire the old thing. Yeah, Jerry also loved the invasion movies. The Thing came to mind, and also. Ray Bradbury wrote a script for something called It Came from Outer Space. So there was a lot of, and he admired this. So I'm going to read one of the poems that Jerry wrote honoring that genre, and it's called After the Invasion. She wears my wife's apron, but her meatloaf is without flavor. And though the 1956 screen police will not let us make love, I assure you, she no longer possesses passion. In a village demolished by fear, citizens look vacuous with an undercurrent of mean. Parties are sedate affairs of finger sandwiches and fruit punch. Even the Catholic parish has relinquished golden vestments for Geneva drab. Barbers play crossword puzzles because hair no longer grows. Faces never shadow. Beauticians drink tea since makeup never smudges. Maids read old comic books as glass never spots from rain. Policemen in pursuit do not use sirens. There are no heroic measures for gunshots. The wounded may just bleed to death. Jerry Garcia.
Thank you, Michael. After the reading as part of the reception, Michael will be leading a lapsed mass, if anyone is interested. And we might be able to talk him into an exorcism as well. We'll see if... I've already got it going. All right. Michael C. Ford. Susan Hayden, you're on deck. I wrote this poem when... for Jerry for the farewell reading that we did here, really not too long ago. I was really moved that Jerry asked me to be part of that reading. He knew so many people and so many poets, and there was really just a finite group of people. He said, come be a part of this reading. And so that felt like a big responsibility. And I'm not sure how much of this makes sense since it was a farewell to the desert, but I'm gonna give it a try. This one is called For the Real Jerry Garcia. As the story goes, the famous musician Jerry Garcia would have to fend off would-be fans on the regular by saying, "No, I'm not the poet, Before he would take the stage in front of hundreds of thousands of fans, most of whom were shouting, "We want spoken word mixed with jazz, please." That's why all the Grateful Dead fans took to alternate forms of consciousness to distract themselves from their inevitable disappointment. When that one died, it got simpler. It was all about the words, a life in service to words, reading after reading, flyer after flyer, email after email, Facebook event after Facebook event, elevating voices known and unknown to lucky, eager ears. Jerry kissed a dead nonprofit on the lips and brought it back to life. And now, as he leaves the building, the neighborhood, the city, and my God, they're talking about blizzards in the desert, who can blame him? We're reminded you can't leave the internet. That's the part that I'm not sure makes sense anymore, though lately I have seen his account active, and I don't know what that means, but there you go. No matter where you decide to plop down your sunset hat, we expect to still see your face, to still see what words you've picked and how you've touched them against each other. Jerry Garcia, not dead. These are the trumpets in our grateful ears. All right, we're going to have a few words from Becky on deck. Please welcome Susan Hayden.
So I had written down literary citizen. It's already been said, but that's the first thing I think of when I think of Jerry, because he didn't just hold space, but he gave space to and for other writers and had such an active community consciousness, which is so important. And my history with Jerry, the Reader's Digest version, is I met him in 2007, at the end of 2007. I had been a poet on the scene in mid to late 80s, through part of the 90s, but got married, had a kid, wrote a novel, started writing longer form, and really kind of backed away from the community a little bit. And then at the end of 2007, I got a call to read at the Venice Grind. And I thought, okay, sure, why not? I went there by myself, and I read a couple pieces, and one of them, they're both, like my typical valley pieces, and one of them was called Garcia's Disciple, about Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. And anyway, and I got off stage, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Hi, I'm Jerry Garcia." And I'm like, "No, you're not. I've met him. I was backstage with him. You're not Jerry Garcia." And he goes, "I'm the other Jerry Garcia, and we're supposed to be friends." And he said, "We have so much to discuss." And it was true. And I think every time we got together after that, it was about Joni Mitchell or Jackson Browne or there was always one of those acoustic characters from the 70s that we both still loved inserted into our conversations. And shortly after I met Jerry, my first husband, Chris, died suddenly. And Jerry really came forward and encouraged me to create Library Girl. He was one of the people who, when I would kind of run the idea by him, maybe I should do a show, he's like, "You need to do a show." And so I'm so grateful for that. And he also suggested some tributes at Library Girl, one of which was the Jackson Browne tribute, and one was the Joni Mitchell tribute. I ended up doing 3 Joni Mitchell tributes, actually, over the years. It's celebrating my 15-year anniversary in a couple weeks there. And so I'm so grateful for that, and for Jerry's heart. He sat through so many stories about me and my, widowhood with, making really bad choices, and he was so patient and such a good friend and just an exemplary human being, and I really, really miss him. So this piece that I'm going to read is I didn't go on Zoom with Library Girl during the pandemic. I didn't want to try to recapture the live event. And so what I did was during the pandemic, I would do these shows every month, but they'd be videotape posts that would add up to a show. So it could have any amount, like it could be 10 people, it could be 45 people. I had people writers reading from all over the world. And I had already produced a live Bowie tribute, but I decided I believe it was January 2021, to do a Bowie tribute called Hang On To Yourself. And I asked Jerry to write a piece. And so he wrote this piece. I'm going to post the video later today on Facebook so you can see and hear him read it. And he made a little film with some great images in it. And so I thought that I would read something that has, I don't think it's, Becky, is it published? Do we know? I don't think this has been published, and I think it should be published. It's called Hang On To Yourself, AKA Would Bowie Wear a Mask? Sometimes I just hang out in the fixated light of my studio, waiting for the sun to shine again. These dark days seize my joints, stall my spirit, and call for de-evolution. My heroes flash in the mist like a communion of saints. On this computer, I share the only vestige of human contact. Portals where people live in 4x3 boxes. Life transposed from childhood dreams to a Ray Bradbury yarn. Authoritarian factions acting out in the burning ether. But I choose to follow only gatekeepers who help me hang on to myself. My thoughts turn to old times, when rock and roll ruled my otherwise flat world. I grew up in acoustic jangle of Peter, Paul, and Mary, electricity of the Beatles, harmony of the Byrds, power chords from David Bowie. Long before uber-populist values exposed us to cellular division and partisan derision, new music came, like a sea change, out of a cockeyed, oversexed singer from the smoky suburbs of London. Destined to pop kingdom, inspired by the right stuff, space oddity turned into Ziggy Stardust. A shock of orange hair, made-up eyes as a sexually vague alien. He commanded spiders from Mars with guitar Lieutenant Mick Ronson, propelling angry triads and major lyrics into radio waves and onto the world stage. Alter egos for unending genius, raging talent shape-shifting through pop culture, morphing from orange-headed androgyny to cocaine-thin white duke, fetching patriarchal in suit and tie. Outrageous headlines, possible danger to self. Messages to mankind. Protect ourselves with love and compassion. Salute the broken buildings. Extend a hand. Nurture, nurture, nurture. Bowie took his last bow as a newly ordained orange-haired oddity came to town. Unnerving Antichrist president with spray tan and ginger comb-over who could not dance, whose candor provided permission to like-minded Americans who recall vintage segregation while tear gas masked policy. I cannot remember him as the only, but the many. Freeform spacesuit, multicolored jumpsuit, designer suit and tie, acoustic 12-string sensibility, music as trade, mellow message hidden in the distortion of the song, rage quantified by the pull of a bass and the fertility of guitar. Not a jam band, the orchestra of genius with the simplicity of lyric as we fly through the rough edges of a bad dream. Hang on to yourself.
Another one gone far too soon. Susan, thank you so much. I had no idea that Jerry was so instrumental in getting Library Girl going, but I'm not at all surprised. That's really great to hear. Susan Hayden. We have one more thing on deck, so don't go anywhere, but please welcome now Becky.
I just wanted to thank Quentin and the staff of Beyond Baroque for helping put this on, and to Rick for all of his leadership for the afternoon, and to all the readers who agreed to come and read. So that's it, just a thank you.
Well, that was most of my farewell speech. Thanks to everyone, especially Beyond Baroque. There's no other place where this could have happened. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is sacred space. This is more than just a venue. It's the literary centerpiece of Los Angeles. It's where it's our communal home, and it's where things like this belong. So thank you, Quentin, and thank you, Beyond Baroque. We've got one more thing. Jerry loved to mix music and poetry. He submitted some tracks to Poetry Superhighway Live when it was just an audio thing, which I played a number of times. He produced some studio tracks, and so the last thing we'll hear in this room before we head out to the reception is Jerry Garcia.
Never seen so many stars, except in the desert night, where winds rattle sage and coyotes roam.
Earth's waxing satellite hovers. Her yellow hue breaks through wires and branches to urge my road trip on balding tires over crusty roads. Loved ones stir in place.
Huh?
They question my midnight wanderlust.
What's going on?
And worry that my insouciance will leave me cold.
Where are you going, honey?
I am sin on the run. The next county is a pipe dream. The trip back a trudge. Tenuous tires and loose exhaust pipes bump along an unbroken road. I would rather be hanging out on my favorite city block under amber lamp lights and high-rise ledges, at home with the nighthawks who absorb my body and leave a restless mind. Tonight my space is faded like an unknown alley, like a shadowed crater, like a dark country road. Tossing about my furrowed bed alongside the grace of a woman who could be my redemption. Reaching to the distressed sky, sleep becomes another failure in the night.